Welcome to a special mailbag edition of the Digital DJ Tips podcast with me, Phil Morse. In this edition, we are talking to our fantastic student community and going through their list of grievances, problems, and things that are just puzzling them as they become better DJs and better DJ producers, which makes this fun for all DJs, but also for those who are just curious about what it's like on the other side of the decks, away from the dance floor. We'll be talking about things like why big name DJs have been turning up in clubs all over the world this week, plugging in their music and finding none of it is there. It's a real thing, folks. We'll be talking about crippling nerves that mean that some DJs just never play out of the home, and what to do to get past that imposter syndrome and play the gigs you know you want to play. And we'll be talking about far more prosaic things like how do you tidy up that whole mess of wires coming out of the back of your DJ gear so everything looks neat. All these kinds of questions and many more things in between are coming up right now. As ever, this is a student-funded podcast. There are no sponsors or partners involved here, and everything you hear is from our own hearts and heads with no one else pushing the buttons or telling us what to say. I hope you enjoy it, and if you do, I'll tell you at the end how you can get closer to everything we do here at Digital DJ Tips. For now though, let's get on with the show. The first question today has been asked by several of our mailbag writers, and it is concerning a bit of a storm in a teacup, well, not if you're affected, in the DJ world around the Pioneer DJ brand and their high-end DJ gear, the stuff that the biggest DJs use when they roll up to play at festivals and clubs and so on. Because what's happened is that DJs have been putting their USB drives into the DJ gear in pro DJ booths to take over from another DJ to play a headline set, and none of their music has been there. The playlists have been blank, which clearly causes panic. And a lot of DJs have been reporting this. So a few people have just said, what's going on? You know, isn't this really bad? So this has been covered really well in the DJ world. I just want to cover it very quickly for our students and for listeners to the podcast. So what happened was that they updated the way that their gear works, and they launched new versions of the firmware that runs that gear that didn't play nicely with the old way the gear works, basically. So in other words, an old way of doing things that they've been saying for a long time, you've got to move on from this, finally disappeared. And when it did finally disappear, all the DJs who had moved on from it got caught out. And that's the short version of what happened. People say, you know, isn't this really bad? Isn't this awful from a top brand? It kind of is and it kind of isn't. They were going in the right direction. They are going in the right direction. The improvements they've made are designed to make DJing better and faster and easier and to bring on exciting new features and all that kind of stuff. The problem is that for a company that makes the best hardware in the business and that powers the best DJ booths and clubs and is used by the best DJs, they're pretty damned awful at software. Their ideas are okay, their implementation is average, their communication and their user experience workflow testing and all that is abysmal, and it catches DJs out, and it has done for years, time and time again. I can pretty much be certain that most of the DJs that were caught out by this weren't surprised, which is a bit damning, really. I think if this company's got one area it needs to improve in massively, it is the way they handle that side of the business, because it isn't good enough and it has caused a lot of genuine pain to people. At the same time, DJing has, unfortunately for some, changed from being something that was really a craft, like playing a guitar or playing the piano or doing something with your hands, to something which is as much at times like you have to be an IT person as much as a DJ, which is to some people a bit sad, and there's definitely a point to be made there. But anyway, that's what happened. So just to answer the several people who asked that before we really get going, I know you wanted to know. Right then, so the mailbag, as usual, a whole mix of stuff here, and I'm going to go through it pretty randomly. So these are what students over in the school have been asking and what I saved for this show rather than dealing with at the time, because I thought there was a wider interest in all these questions, as is always the case. So I'm going to start off with one from Patrick, and Patrick is 58 years old. Patrick has been DJing for 30 years, and Patrick is now saying, you know, all this time I've never bought a subwoofer speaker. Do I need one? Well, Patrick, what a good question. For those who don't know what Patrick's talking about, it's those big speakers that you see literally on the floor. You go to a nightclub and people often sit on them because they just sat on the floor and they make a good seat if you can get yourself up onto them. But they're never up on poles, or they're never hanging from the ceiling. They're always just plonked somewhere down near the ground. And that is because they handle the really low bass notes. If you took all the other speakers away and left them in, it would sound like music pounding through the floor from about 2 rooms away. And so they are something that are curious, because when you take them away, having had them, Patrick, you really miss them and you want them back instantly. But if you've never had them, you don't miss them. So I would say you should try it. You should try and hire or rent 1 or 2. Patrick's got some really good gear anyway. Patrick DJs out and about at food courts and birthdays and anniversaries and office parties and mobile gigs and all that kind of thing. I would say go and rent one. Go to your local DJ hire shop and get 1 or 2 and try them at your next gig. And even better, halfway through the gig, turn them off. And then turn them on again about 5 minutes later and see what your crowd does and see how you feel. You might just find that that hooks you and you want some. But I love this, Patrick. Thank you. You've been DJing for 30 years and you're 58 and you're still looking for new ways and things and being curious about the stuff you've never done. Great question. So I'm glad to have been able to help you with that one, Patrick. Talking of aging, I've got another age question here. Another question from one of our grown folk DJs in the community. This is from Alexander, who says, I spend a lot of time dancing and also learning to DJ and going to festivals and clubs, and my knees are starting to hurt. Actually, I don't know how old you are, Alexander. You might be a sprightly 25-year-old who's just lived a life. Anyway, I'm going to assume that you're not. Anyway, the question's the same. My knees are starting to hurt profusely, says Alexander. What can I do? I asked a fellow DJ and he recommended wearing no shoes and using an anti-fatigue mat, but I'm already barefoot. Any recommendations on mats or something else? Thank you. Ouch. I've seen a lot of people recently wearing Skechers shoes, that brand of shoes called Skechers. They seem to have really good padding in them, and people who stand up a lot in shops and so on, I've noticed, are wearing them a lot around here. So there's one kind of tip from the left field. You might want to look into that rather than being barefoot. Flat foot shoes are better than shoes that have got a bit of an angle or a bit of a heel on them. So don't go for the kind of trainers with the big built up back, I would say. Not if you're just standing there. You're going to want something flatter. And this is all coming from my experience as a runner as well, by the way. But also, I think one of the most important things to remember about when you've got aching joints and so on is probably your joints are taking on stuff that your muscles should be doing. So if you can do any strength and conditioning, if you can get down the gym a couple of times a week, if you can do some exercises with weights and so on, it will do you a world of good anyway. But it will certainly help you when you've got to stand around for a long time. Again, this is coming from the other side of my life as an athlete. So I would say definitely, Alexander, consider not being barefoot. Definitely the anti-fatigue mats are good. Maybe getting some nice cushioned shoes, but stick with something quite flat. But really the ongoing way to deal with this is strength and conditioning exercise. Doesn't have to be much, a couple of times a week, and you can do these things at home as well. You don't need to go to a gym to do them. Wow, what a post bag, because we're a DJ website and we have already covered something that is about going to the gym and dealing with hurting knees. Whatever is going to be coming next, well, one thing you can be sure of, it's not going to be something boring or something that you might expect. Actually, if you've been teaching DJing for a long time, as I have, this is actually something that we do expect and we do see a lot. And it's from Red Eyes. So thank you, Red Eyes, for opening up here. Red Eyes says, I'm terrified and I suffer from immense anxiety of performing in public outside of my family and friends due to the fear of rejection and criticism of my age and of not being able to do quick mixing and tricks of the type of music I play, like drum and bass, techno, progressive and electronica. Well, while my family tell me I'm a great DJ and they are actually pressuring me into doing some gigs outside, I suffer badly from imposter syndrome. I've been dreaming of DJing since high school and I just started a few years ago. I'm now 60 and after taking your beginner and mixing courses, which are fantastic by the way, I just want to share the music I love and tell my stories. I guess if I had positive feedback from people outside my family and friends, that would help. What are your thoughts? Is there such a thing as DJ therapy? If so, I definitely need it. Hopefully you can help me get out of my own way. Right, Red Eyes, I will give you the tough love I give everyone who asks this. So imagine that your DJ journey, playing a gig in public, is like running a marathon. See, I'm back to the running metaphors. Now, if you train for a marathon, how are you going to feel on the start line? You're going to feel very, very nervous. You're going to feel like you can't do it. You're going to feel like it's all going to go wrong. How are you going to feel when you're running that marathon? Probably a complete roller coaster mix of emotions. At times you'll be elated, at times you'll feel like it's the worst thing you've ever done, at times you'll be swearing you're never going to do it again, at times you'll be thinking this is actually all right. Things will happen you didn't expect that are good, things will happen you didn't expect that are bad. At the end of that marathon, you're going to get to the finish line, you're going to cross the finish line, you're probably going to be in tears, and you're going to have just had the best experience of your life. What I just described is what your first big DJ set in public is going to feel like. The build up to it, the playing it, and how you're going to feel afterwards. And not only the first, probably the 100th. All DJs feel this, red eyes. If they don't, it's because they don't care. I had a friend once who played after a DJ that was booked to show off the features of some new DJ gear, right? So this was at an industry event. We were on the roof, picture it. The sun's going down, we're on the rooftop of a hotel in Madrid, in the Spanish capital, looking out over the smoky city as the sky turned dark. And this DJ was playing on these new CDJs at the time and cutting up and doing mashups and doing all this kind of crazy stuff, doing a very good job of it. And my friend had to follow that DJ. Now, my friend is a producer. My friend has had #1 singles. My friend knows their music and went on, played about 2 songs and threw the headphones down and went off and said, I can't follow that other guy. I can't do it. I'm not playing, and stormed off. This is someone who's been in the industry for 30 years. This is someone who was playing wonderful music. In fact, I wrote down one of the 2 songs that they played at the beginning of their set in order to go and buy it because I'd never heard it before and it was awesome. That should not have happened, but what that proves is that this happens from the bottom to the top. The trick here is to remember that 1, you love your music, 2, you know your music, 3, you've practiced, you're one of the few people that's actually bothered to learn properly and taken courses and stuff, but 4, what you already know is enough. You don't need to be able to do everything every other DJ in the world can do just to have the chance to stand up there and play. You're not flying a jumbo jet or performing heart surgery. You're just playing music to people who want to hear it. They want to have a good night. They want you to do well just like you want to. All the vibes are in your direction. There's no one there trying to catch you out. There's no one there waiting for you to fail. And also, no one can see how you feel on the inside. Now, we're very careful here at the school to never tell people to fake it, never to tell people to cheat. But one time when faking it until you make it is probably a good idea is when you are playing a DJ set and you feel like it's all going wrong. Because if you can smile and if you can just take a deep breath and get on with it, you're actually not being genuine. You're not being true to how you feel inside. But guess what? No one else can see how you feel inside. And a true pro knows that. A true pro can put on a performance even when they're feeling the absolute diametric opposite. That's the difference between pros and amateurs. Pros know what's necessary and get on with it, however they're feeling personally on that particular night or whatever. So you're going to feel those ups and downs. Your job is to get on with it and just to trust the process that you've got yourself to that point using and that will get you to the end of the night. And you certainly don't need flash DJ tricks to play the music you love in front of other people. And if you do need something to get out your own way, I had a quick click on your profiles. You look cool, red eyes, and you're going to get a lot of people admiring you when you get up there and do it. So just get out there and get on with it. And as you say, get out of your own way. And there's the tough love that I promised you and that I give everyone who asks the same question. And believe me, you are not alone there. We're going through the post bag here at Digital DJ Tips on the podcast today of questions asked by our students over the last couple of weeks. And the next one comes in from one of our regulars, Sarah. Now, Sarah says, I've been DJing for a few years now, but I mostly concentrate on mixtapes and live streams. And so generally I use pre-prepared playlists. I don't have that much experience of how to read and react to a live crowd when I'm choosing the next song. I've been a good student and I have a well-kept DJ library with all my fields and energy levels and metadata and all that good stuff all filled in, and all my stuff's organized into genres and years and so on. So I should be able to find what I need fairly quickly, right, in front of an audience. But I've seen other DJs using situation crates. Wow, situation crates. Let's talk about those in a minute. And so they're always ready to find a track that matches the mood of the room. Apart from something obvious like chill out tunes or peak time tunes, can you recommend any situation crates I should have to make sure I'm ready to read the room? So, okay, Sarah, let's unpack this a little bit. The best way to play a great DJ set is to think hard about who's going to be there. Think hard about what you ought to play, what you think you want to play, what you're pretty sure they're going to want you to play. And then also to think about what happens if they don't like that? What happens if a different kind of crowd turns up? What happens if you have to pivot to something else? And then with all those thoughts in your mind, you're going to pack a crate, a virtual crate or a playlist of about twice the amount of music you need for that gig. So if it's 2 hours and you normally play 20, 25 tunes in an hour, you're going to pack 50 tunes to get to the 2 hour mark, and then another 50, so 100 tunes. That's what you're going to do. It might take you hours to do this, but those hours are hours well spent because they're like revising for an exam. And when you turn up at the gig, you've got a well-honed playlist that's just about big enough for you to be able to go off in different directions if it's not quite working out and to be creative with, but not so big that you just don't know where to turn next. About twice the amount of music that you're gonna play is about right. So you should do that for every gig. That's most of the work done. It's most of the heavy lifting done. That said, it always helps if you've got other strategies and things to fall back on. As you said, some DJs will have a few types of gigs they play. They might play mobile and club gigs. They might play a warm-up in a bar, but then play peak time. They might play, after hours, where it's a different vibe to the main part of their evening. So that's one way, as you said. Another way, I think, is a get out of jail crate. So a get out of jail crate is, look, if it's all going wrong, these are the tracks that I've never known to fail, right? So that can be quite a nice fallback to have. But really, once you've gone off from your pre-prepared, pre-thought through playlist, you should be coming back to it. So there's a difference between a playlist and a set list. A set list is where you decide everything you're going to play and the order you're going to play it in. A playlist is more like a crate. In fact, Serato software calls it a crate. It's probably a more accurate description of it, right? It's like the old record crates where you used to literally take a box of records. It didn't mean you were going to play them all, but you thought hard about all the ones you were taking with you. You see the nuance here. So packing a crate or a playlist of about twice the amount of music should definitely be your fallback here. And the other thing is, reading a crowd and deciding what to play next can never be 100% taught, and no DJ knows how to do it 100%. And so at that point, you're just going to be learning on the job, and there's no way around it. It's part of the joy of DJing. It doesn't matter how organized you are, it doesn't matter how you've got your music sliced and diced. Sometimes you just know what to play next and you play it and it wasn't in any of those crates. And at other times, despite your organization, you're just not feeling it. It's not going your way. It's the unpredictability and joy of DJing, and it's what keeps it fresh for all of us. So that is my potted what to do when you're used to planning your sets, but you're going to be playing in public and you won't be able to. Good luck, Sarah. Okay, so there's a really good motto, good learning point from the next question. So thank you for it from Marty. Marty asks something which lots of students ask when they start to learn the mechanics of transitioning between songs, the mechanics of what a DJ does. What all those lines and bars and peaks and waveforms, and when you hear DJs saying they're counting their beats and so on, what all that actually means, and what happens if you end up unable to do any of it. How do you know where to mix next? How do you know what part of a song to do stuff in where everything's new to you because you're playing music that you don't know? So Marty says, I'm working on bringing in my next song in my DJ set at the correct moment. And I know that phrasing is important. This is where you know that songs are divided into uniform sections, a verse, a chorus, an intro, an outro, a drop, a build, and so on. And these sections are always the same length. They're always 4 bars of music, 8 bars of music, 16 bars of music. They always follow a pattern. And so Marty says, I know phrasing is important, so well done, Marty. But if I'm not familiar with a song and I blindly start it somewhere in the middle or whatever, how will I know where to bring in the next song? Any tips at all to help with this? So this is a great question, because DJs, when they're listening to music that they don't know, especially beginners, who spent a long time with getting to know a few songs, and like they maybe even help themselves by putting markers, putting cue points in their software that says, this is where the chorus is, or this is where the bit I like to mix out is. DJs that have done that get very scared with songs they've never heard before, because how are they meant to know where those points are without those helpers and without learning the songs? But here's the brilliant thing for you, Marty. All songs follow exactly the same rules. Now, they might break the rules every now and then in a little way that's not really consequential, but ultimately they all follow the same rules. They all follow the same patterns. They all follow the same blueprints. If you were to go into a studio and watch a producer making dance music, they will load up onto a very powerful computer a program called Ableton Live. Normally, they might load up Logic Pro or Cubase even, and it's an older type of software that does this, FL Studio. All these programs are called digital audio workstations, or DAWs. Now, a digital audio workstation, the screen that you build the song on is a little bit like the waveforms at the top of your DJ software, but instead of having two of them, it's got an infinite number. So let's just say, for argument's sake, 24. And every part of the song has one of these rows for the producer to put parts of music on, the drums, the bass lines, the vocals, or whatever. But it hasn't only got the rows, it's also got columns. And the columns are divided up in a very predictable way. They're divided in fours. 4 beats, 1, 2, 3, 4, makes up 1 bar of music. And they're divided into bars as well. 4 bars of music makes up a 4-bar phrase. 2 sets of 4 bars makes up an 8-bar phrase. 2 sets of 8 bars makes up a 16-bar phrase, and so on. When a producer is making a song, everything they do snaps to those lines, those vertical markers, and is divided into those 2s, 4s, 8s, 16s, even 32s and 64s. So every single song in the world, whether you know it or not, that you're likely to DJ with, follows a pattern which, as long as you know what you're looking for, you can decipher in a number of seconds. And so all you're looking for is where obvious parts of the song start and finish, where the vocal comes in or the vocal ends, where the chorus obviously comes in or ends, where the drums stop and the song goes quiet because it's now going to build up to a drop, where that drop comes in, towards the end of the song, where the music stops and it's just a drum beat. At those points, you are at the beginning of what's called a musical phrase. You are at the beginning of a chunk of music that could be 4 musical bars or 8 or 16 long, but that is the place to start mixing in another song. And more than that, that is the place where you will mix in another song at its beginning of a musical phrase, at the beginning of its 4 or 8 or 16. Now, if you get that bit right and the songs are at the same tempo, and we won't go into detail about how that happens, but modern gear makes it easy, then it doesn't matter if you don't know the songs, as long as you've had a quick listen to make sure there's nothing that you're not expecting coming up in the song that you're mixing in, and you know there's nothing you're not expecting in the one that you're going out from. In other words, it's good to have an idea that you're not trying to put, a full chorus over a full chorus, because that's never going to sound good even if you get the timing right. But as long as you've had a quick listen to the songs before you load them to your decks and you're sure of that, Marty, a lot of DJs will make sets and will perform mixes, especially for radio shows and so on, where they don't know any of the songs. I was chatting to Ferry Corsten a couple of weeks ago when we were making the course here in the studio that we've just released with him, his trance course. And he was saying that for his radio show, he just has a quick 5-second listen to each of the songs in a big pile of maybe 100 songs to get the 10 or 15 that he wants to play on his radio show that week. Quick flick through them, that's it. He throws them in a folder, puts them in a rough order, and he mixes them having never heard any further. So you can do it. Yes, it's going to be a little bit harder than the songs you know, but Marty, it is something you can do because they're not going to be that different from each other. In fact, once you've figured out what goes on in music, especially dance music, they all sound very, very similar structure-wise. Because if they didn't, people wouldn't know how to dance to them. It's a weird thing that when you start DJing, you tend to forget what you already knew about music. If you look out at a dance floor full of people having a great time who've never even thought about DJing, they know when the drops are, they know when the breakdowns are, they know when a new song's starting and when a song's ending, they know where the hands in the air moments are and the choruses and the verses. As long as you're aware of those things, well, they are the building blocks of all dance music and of mixing. But DJs seem to forget this stuff. and they tend to have a confidence crisis about being able to do it when they get behind the decks. But you'll get past that, Marty, and I do wish you the best of luck with it. It's a great thing when you realise that you're doing this on instinct and not having to concentrate quite so much about it. Good luck, Marty. Now I'm going to apologise to our student here because I don't have your name, but you write this. Once a year I DJ a gala, and every time I take pictures, you can see the back of my DJ control with all the wires and cables hanging out. What can I do about this? I don't want to buy a big DJ booth or anything like that. I mostly DJ as a hobby, so is there an easy fix? Yes, there is an easy fix. So when I spent time earlier on, well, actually it was late last year, it wasn't earlier on this year, with Jazzy Jeff at his studio in Philadelphia when we were filming our course with him. Jeff has exactly the same problem. He's just got a table, a workbench with his decks on it, and his mixer's got all those wires hanging out the back. What Jeff has done is build a wooden box. So you imagine a wooden box about the size of a shoebox. You could actually test this with a shoebox to get the size right before you go and build one or find one. Jazzy Jeff has a wooden box, and imagine a shoebox just kind of stood there with its lid on, right? Now imagine if you went to one of the long sides of the shoebox and you cut all the cardboard away. So now you've got a shoebox where if you put the shoes in it, they'd fall out the side. Now you turned it round so that the bit you'd cut out was facing the back of your DJ gear, and you pushed it so that all the leads and cables were hidden inside the shoebox because the hole you'd made allowed them all to be pushed inside. That's basically what Jeff made. He made a box that would hide the cables coming out of the unit, and then he made sure that they were all tidied up, and you can get that quite neat stuff on Amazon. I bought mine from, that kind of wraps around cables to keep them tidy. And so all the cables kind of went together into one bunch within this nice box, and then came out in a nice, neat, single braided kind of covered pipeline of cables, if you like, out of one side, looking very, very neat. And so Jeff had his made for him exactly the right size, and then put his logo on it and stuff. It can be a really nice way of doing it. And that comment, by the way, was from Jermaine. So thank you, Jermaine. And I'm sorry that I didn't keep your name at the top when I grabbed it out of our system. But good to know you're here, because you know, it's always nice, isn't it, when the students who ask the questions are here to listen to them. Right, okay. So thank you, Jermaine, for putting me right on that one. We are going through our student mailbag of questions. I've got some great ones left to go through now. So let's go to the Amanda's question, who says, this is an easy one to answer, Amanda. Thank you for asking it. A lot of people will wonder about this because it's something that normal people never know exists when it comes to music. What's Phil rabbling about? It's this. Amanda says, I'm looking for some 90s pop song remixes, i.e. I want it that way and so on, but I want them to have a dance beat. Where do you get these edits from? And is there anything I'm not realizing here? Well, yes, there is, Amanda. Most of these dance edits, you know, when you hear current pop songs that maybe are slow or that don't have a decent beat and so on, and also the greatest hits versions of big hits from the past and so on that have been kind of remixed for DJs and for mixing and for dance floors, most of these come from download pools. So a download pool is a DJ only service that you subscribe to. They'll cost $30, $40, maybe $50 a month. And you can download unlimited music from them. It's normally new music, and it's mainly commercial music, although there are download pools that specialize in other kinds of music, but it's mainly along those lines. And some of them are very good at classics as well, like you're asking for here, Amanda. They'll have packs of DJ edits and DJ mixes of classic songs. My advice to you would be to go to some of the big ones. So you're going to be looking at names like Zip DJ, Promo Only, BPM Supreme, DJ City. There's a few for you to look at. Go to some of them and see if they've got offers on. See if they will sign you up for a month. Now they'll say, are you a working DJ? Tell them whatever you think they need to hear. Most of them are extremely easy to get onto, even though they have to ask those questions. And often you'll get a month for a cut down price, or maybe even for free. And then look, they're unlimited. So download everything you can think of. Have a look around, spend hours, spend days on them. You'll soon find one of them that really suits you and that's got the kind of stuff you're looking for. But DJ pools are your secret weapon. Now, if you want to do it the more modern way, if you like streaming services, then increasingly BeatSource, which is one of the DJ friendly streaming services, is carrying this kind of edits as well. And they've got a lot of major label edits of really big names. And so you can go and stream directly from those services too. So that's another way of figuring this out. But most people don't know about this stuff. Of course, they don't know about this stuff because it is not the kind of thing that your everyday Joe even knows exists. They probably think DJs are making all these mixes as they think about it on the fly, but really doing your own DJ edits on the fly is something that DJs don't tend to do. They tend to get them ahead of time, and this is where they get them from. Good question from David in the live chat. Do those downloads then, if you're going to get downloads from these pools, do they expire if you cancel? And no, they don't expire if you cancel, David. They are yours. You own them. They are your MP3s. They're on your computer. You keep them forever. Jermaine, thank you again, Jermaine, says DJ City has got tons of pop remixes. I found remixes from Earth, Wind and Fire and others as well, Michael Jackson, etc, etc. So there's a good place. There's a recommendation for one of the ones I said, DJ City. I'm surprised, says the Ruckus, that hiding cables hasn't become more of a business point. There's money to be made here. Maybe there is indeed money to be made there as well. And a good tip, just going back a couple of questions from Andrew. You know, we were talking about not knowing where to mix out from songs. Andrew says if you set the beat jump control on your controller to 32, that will usually put you in the correct place for phrases. So there's a control on DJ Gear for the non-DJs and the curious who are listening to this. There is a control on DJ Gear that will, instead of, you know, like imagine on a record when you see a DJ going forward really fast or going back really fast and you can hear it, right? Well, it's a way of going forward and back in a track, but it's far more subtle. And the reason it's subtle is it plays on what I was telling Marty earlier, that all these songs are built around chunks of music, 4 bars, 8 bars, 16 bars, and so on. And Andrew says if you set the beat jump control to 32, then that will usually put you in the correct place for phrases. And that's completely correct because 32 beats is 8 bars of music, and most music is built around that kind of building block. So the beat jump control will literally jump that number of beats. It won't jump a minute into the track or a minute back. You're not jumping by a set amount of time, you're jumping by a set amount of bars and beats. And so if you think about it, if you're using a control that will jump you forward by a uniform number of bars and beats, and these are the same size chunks that DJs use when they're making their own music and producers use, then jumping forward by a whole chunk of music will jump you to the equivalent part of the next chunk of music. We all know music repeats, right? The riffs and the vocals and the parts, the bass lines, they're over and over again, right? It builds on itself. So you don't change the melody all the time. The melody will carry through the track. The bass line will carry through the track. Everything stays the same and changes slowly. So if you're jumping by this uniform amount, then quite often you can jump through half a song and no one will really notice. So yeah, having that set is a really good thing to do when you are in songs you don't know, because you can jump to the parts that sound all right for mixing. And if it goes wrong, you can jump back to the part that sounded all right while you're doing it. All amazing stuff that digital DJ gear lets you do. I've got a question here from Chris, because of course we are now halfway through November, and that means that it's becoming, I think it's 41 days to Christmas. Amazing stuff. And it is indeed a seasonal question. I'm booked for a season of Christmas party nights in a local hotel, says Chris. So firstly, congratulations, Chris. But I've been out of the game for 7 years. How do I incorporate recent Christmas music on top of what I'm used to from 20 years of previous experience of Christmas nights? Have things changed that much in all that time? So it's a couple of very quick tips for you here, Chris. Number one, the people coming out at Christmas are not the people who come out all year round. The people coming out at Christmas are, if you like, the uneducated clubbers, the uneducated dancers, the uneducated masses. They don't want to hear all the new music. They just want to hear the biggest tunes of all time with the biggest Christmas tracks of all time thrown in. If you can play 1 or 2 recent tunes from the Christmas tracks that have been released in the last 5 years, that's going to be enough. And I promise you, they won't go down as well as Do They Know It's Christmas and Mariah Carey's All I Want for Christmas and all the other big classics. They just won't, because they're the ones people want to hear. And that goes for the rest of your music as well. Christmas is a time for entertainment, not for education. Christmas is a time for nostalgia, not for new music. So I wouldn't worry too much, Chris. Obviously, look back over the next 7 years. Get the best tunes from those years. Get yourself a little crate. Here's a nice one for you, Sarah. And a little crate of recent tracks that you think might work. But don't be surprised if it's all the old classics that do it best for you. It's just at this time of year, that's the way it works. 41 days to Christmas. Craziness, eh? This is from Lou. I'm using an external drive with Rekordbox and with 2 different Mac computers, but every time I switch from one computer to another, some of the information is missing. What can I do besides getting Rekordbox Cloud in order to mirror the program on both computers? You are hitting a classic error. It's not really an error, but it's a classic situation here, Lou. DJ software is pretty much universally designed to work on one computer with one database and one music collection. As soon as you start trying to make it work on more than one, you are going to run into problems. That's just how it is. Unless you are an IT expert or a complete geek, I would avoid it like the plague. Yes, some of these software companies will say you can do it this way and you can do it that way. But ultimately, one laptop, one collection is where you should stick. Otherwise, you become an IT person, not someone getting better at the craft of DJing. And unfortunately, Lou, I would say if you really wanted to do that, and because you don't want to do this, I would just say, look, you're going to have to bite the bullet and learn the official way of doing it, which is using the Rekordbox Cloud, which is the official way of keeping your music library away from any particular computer in a master collection on Dropbox. And from that master collection, you can sync to any other computers you want to use it with. It introduces more complexity. Sometimes it introduces a lot of complexity. But once you get it working, that is the most reliable way of doing this stuff. There's no way around it. And actually, an interesting fact is that Rekordbox didn't kind of invent the way they do that. So I know of a lot of other areas of creative life where this has been a problem, and it was been solved, really. The first place I saw this solved was in the photography world. So in the photography world, you have the same thing, really. So photographers would have a collection of photos, which are literally a picture, right? They're the digital file that is the picture. But that picture would have a lot of metadata associated with it. So just like with music, the metadata is the artist and the title and the artwork and how often you've played it and what playlist you've got it in. The photographer will have the client and the album and the place the photo was taken and the time and the camera and all the settings of the camera, the aperture and the shutter speed and all that. So all this extra information. And the photography world, when they decided that it was time that photographers were having their collections so that they could access them anywhere and, you know, take them on a camera and then edit them on an iPad and then get them home to process them on their big computers at home and so on, and therefore the cloud was a good idea, they hit on the idea of using storage like Dropbox for the photos, but using a very fast, proprietary, small library for all that metadata and tying that metadata to the photos kind of at the point where you wanted to then do something with them. And they hit on the idea of having, so for instance, Photoshop. I'm not sure if Photoshop did this. I know that Image, which is like a Google Photos style solution to this, did it this way. They had a proprietary database where all that tiny but important information about the photos was handled by the company, but the photos themselves were handled by the photographer. And Rekordbox has done the same thing. So when you're using their cloud, all the metadata, all the stuff about your music is handled by them, very fast in the background. But the actual music itself, which let's face it, we're all quite precious about, is handled by Dropbox, your Dropbox, or you can subscribe to a plan where they give you the Dropbox. So it's interesting that they've kind of copied something from another sector there. It does work. I'm quite a fan of it. I think there are problems with it. As we said at the very top of today's show, this isn't a company that's known for rolling stuff out particularly smoothly or for exhaustively beta testing it so that it's going to be fine in production. They're just not, unfortunately. But it is a good solution, and I like it. I think it's the way forward. So maybe you should have another look at the Rekordbox Cloud in order to do this. So I'm going to take one final question here. And typically we are not going to get away from that. We are not going to get away from this issue with playing your music on club gear. Not this week, not right now. So the final question today is from Colin. I've got a gig tonight, says Colin. I've just learned that the players are old CDJ 2000s. Will my USBs work? Will all the stuff I've saved appear when I plug my USB into these older players? Colin, if I were you, I would be very, very careful. The first thing I would do is make sure that you've got both versions of the library that Rekordbox recommends you have when you export. I'm not sure exactly where we're at with this now, but I'm pretty sure that you can still choose to have both versions of that library exported. That will give you the best chance here. But then I would turn up early and give it a go and just make sure, because I don't want you to go through what DJs have been going through this last couple of weeks, the nightmare of having blank playlists and stuff. I don't think they will, as long as you've got that old version of the library. But honestly, if you're playing on old, especially if you're playing on older gear, Colin, I would get down there and test it. There's no two ways about it. In fact, I would get down there now and test it if you've got a gig tonight, and be sure, because there's nothing worse than not having the music you want to play prepared the way you want to prepare it. And that is where we're going to leave it for today. Thank you so much, everyone. I thought that was a great post bag this week. Thank you very much to everyone for taking part. Again, we are student funded. Digital DJ Tips is the world's biggest DJ school. We make our money from people like you when you decide you want to learn DJing and you come to us to buy our amazing courses made with such big names like Ferry Corsten, Jazzy Jeff, James Hype, Layback Luke, and many more. So please do come and have a look at digitaldjtips.com and maybe become our latest free member. You will get a copy of our book as a thank you for doing just that. Head over to digitaldjtips.com, click the pink join button, and our book, Rock the Dance Floor, the #1 book on how to DJ out there, will be winging its way to you as a thank you from us for joining. That's it for this week. Now get good, get out there, make the moments, and I'll see you on another podcast very soon. Bye for now.